Good day, everyone. My name is Maryann, and I'm going to show you some sewing things today. I have a really easy project. It's a lot of fun to make. It goes quickly. Last time we worked on a block, and we will continue to work on blocks throughout these sessions so that we can do a sampler quilt at the end. But I thought it'd be fun to do something different this week and something that you might want to get started for around the holidays. I brought you some of my samples. This is a little tiny mat, a table runner type thing, but you can use it on the tank of your toilet. It fits on mine perfectly. I also brought some larger table runners. This is my Christmas one, same exact design as the little one I showed you and made the same way. And then I brought a fall one that I want to show you. And I'm going to work on a fall one with you today to show you how to do it. This is my fall one. And it's reversible if you want to. So there that is. Okay, I cut the lengths of my fabric before I came, and I just did it from selvage to selvage for the width. Now what I did, this is going to be similar to the other fall one I showed you. This is going to be the inner part, and you can make it any size you want. The back part, and the part that's going to flip over, you want about maybe 5 or 6 inches wider than the other part so that it forms your border. It'll form this border without you adding another border. So let me get started. First, you're going to press your fabric really well. And a lot of people like to use a little bit of starch, or there's something called best press that people like. I already cut these to the size I wanted. So I'm just going to press all these seams, all these creases out right now. And like I said, you can make it any size you want. I chose to make another table runner, and my table's fairly large, so I'm making it to fit my table. And as you can see, there's a couple of creases that don't want to come out because it's been folded for so long. That's when either water or starch or best press really helps a lot. Unfortunately, I didn't bring mine with me today, but that's a really good thing to have when you're doing quilting or sewing to get the creases out. Okay. The creases that are left in here really aren't going to be any issue right now. I can get them out after it's all sewn. So that's the larger piece of fabric. And this is the insert. And I picked fall fabrics, but not necessarily Thanksgiving or Halloween. There's pumpkins and flowers and that type of thing. If you have a sewing machine that has a lot of fancy stitches, a lot of decorative stitches, you can use them when you turn the points up, and I'll show you how to do that. I use just the plain stitch, I believe, in all of these. What you're going to do is take the 2 pieces of fabric and put them good side, matching the top. Instead of pins, I like to use these clips. You can buy them at Joann's around here, or you can buy them at most fabric stores or online. You can buy them even on Amazon. They're little tiny clips, and it keeps you from having to have pins that you're going to take out and that type of thing when you're sewing. And it holds your fabric together really nicely. Okay, let me get to sewing. Okay. I do backstitch a couple stitches. When you make these table runners, you can actually make them any size you want. All you have to do is remember you want to cut one piece of fabric, the one that you want to kind of be the border, a little bit larger than the other one. And it depends on what size border you want. Some people like a wider border, some people like a narrower border. Some people use batting inside the table runner. I don't. I just, because my fabric's really got a lot of body to it, I just use 2 pieces of fabric. And it's very washable. Press it a little bit. Straight. If you use batting, when you turn the triangular ends to it, it kind of makes it a little bit bulky. That's one of the reasons I don't like to use batting. And the other thing is, I'll show you when we get done this table runner. On the triangular ends, if you want, you could actually hang a tassel. I'm kind of more of a plain person, so I like it just the way it is, real plain. But some people like to hang a tassel on it. You can either sew the tassel in, or you could sew a button on the end of your mat, and then you can just put the tassel on by putting it around the button. It's kind of your own preference. These table runners actually get addictive. You'll want to make more and more and more of them. I like to make them for the different seasons. Whenever you're sewing, you always want to press your seams as you go along before you put the next piece on. Because I'm not putting another piece onto this, I'm going to sew the other side. I'm going to do the pressing on both seams at the same side, and at the same time, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, this one long seam's done. Now remember, we cut the two pieces of fabric, two different widths. So now what we're going to do is sew the other side, take this and make it match this end and sew it. So that's going to create a border when we get done. So I'm going to sew this long seam, and then I'll show you how it creates the border. I try to match up one end really well. Well, I match the long seam really well, but I also try to match one of the ends really well, because then you can kind of even off the other end when you're done. That was my back stitch. I guide the fabric all along that little ledge, and it gives me a nice even seam. If you don't have, that's called a 1/4 inch foot. If you don't have one of those 1/4 inch feet, you can always put a piece of tape on your machine, figure out where a 1/4 inch seam would be, and put a piece of tape along that line, and you just run your fabric along that piece of tape. Sometimes your pieces of fabric, even though you're cutting them from one edge to the other, will be a different size, because some of the bolts of fabric are 44 inches wide, some are 42. So don't worry about that. You're going to take care of that at the end. We're done with both seams. Now, before I turn it the right way out, I'm going to just press these seams just the way they are. And that's called setting the seams. What you're doing is getting the thread to go right into the fabric. I'm also going to take my scissors when I'm done and cut some of these stray threads. Even though this fabric is pretty thick and pretty dark colored, I don't want them to show through. Okay, that was the one side. We're going to go ahead and do the other side. Now you're just pressing the seams at this point. You're not going to press the whole table runner. I'm going to snip some of these loose threads. Get rid of them. The other thing for sewers is make sure you always have a pair of scissors that you use just for sewing. You should not be using your good sewing scissors on paper. It really wrecks them. So make sure your scissors are just for sewing. You can actually make one of these table runners within minutes. I'd say 10-15 minutes if you're not talking at the same time. They go pretty fast. Okay. Now remember, the one piece of fabric is wider than the other, so it's kind of look kind of funky like this. You always press towards the darker side so that the seam doesn't show, so the fabric doesn't show. So I'm just going to press it to the darker side so it'll stay like that. And if both sides are dark, you press it whichever way you want. I was worried that once I got into the center of this runner that I wouldn't be able to figure out which way that seam was really turned. That's why I figured I'd kind of put it in the right position now. And as you're doing this, you're not really worried about the other seam. We're going to worry about that in a minute. Okay, this side is all pressed to the darker side. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to press this next seam all to the darker side. Now we'll turn it inside out again, and that should make it easier. As you can see, the one piece of fabric's a little bit off from the other. That's fine because we're going to trim it over at the end. Now what you want to do is make sure that your two border pieces are equidistant, the center piece. So I'm going to take just this little ruler and measure and try to get both sides kind of even. So let me see. Okay, that's about 1.5. And that's about 1.5. So I'm going to go down a few inches and do the same thing. Cutting another loose thread here. Since that's even up then, and I'm going to go ahead and press that. Okay. And I always press towards the outside to make sure that the fabric is pushed together. There's no great big lumps there. Starting to look like a table runner now. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna even off these ends. I don't want the selvage on my end. I want to take all that off. You're going to use your ruler, match up one of the lines on your ruler with the edge of the table runner. And so that makes it even. Then I'm going to cut across there. And that looks fairly matched up. So we're going to go ahead and cut it now. If you notice how easily that cuts, you need to change your blade often. It should cut like butter. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on this side, because even though you don't see the selvage, there's little pinholes and stuff there from it. Okay, that looks fairly even. Let's move this up a little. And now I'm going to take the two sides and see if they are kind of the right length, and it looks like they match just perfectly. Okay, what we're going to do now to make the points is you're going to put the two, so the background fabric is in the back and the good fabric is in the front, and I'm going to go ahead and take a 1/4 inch seam on each side again. You'll notice that I'm cutting my threads myself. This does have a cutter on it, but I'm so used to cutting it myself that I just always cut my threads off myself. Okay. Do the other side, same way. Pull my threads back here. Okay. Now we have both of the ends done. I clip the bottom end because when we turn it, it doesn't leave such bulk there. And I like to trim the top end because when we turn it, it won't show. Now we're going to flip it over. And to press that point out, I'm going to use this, but you can use, don't use scissors because they'll make a hole right at the end there. You can use a chopstick. You could use the wrong end of a ball pen, the clicker end. You want to use something to push it out, but not something that's going to break through your stitches. So we're going to have this all pushed out. There we go. And what I'm going to do before I iron it down is I'm going to look at the width of my mat, and this one is exactly 14 inches. So I want the center seam to be exactly 7 inches in order for it to go right. So I'm going to press that down at 7 inches. I don't know if everybody can see what I was doing. It's 14 to 14 here, and this seam line is at 7. Yep, it's at 7. So I'm going to press it down like that. And actually, I'm going to put some clips in it to hold it like that. I'm going to Sometimes I put a pin in the middle just to give it more stationary. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with the other side. Right here. Hopefully this is going to be the same size. It is 14. And I can get this to 7. I'm going to pull it over this way a tiny little bit. Yep, that looks good. And I'm going to press this down. Now the only thing left to do is to seam your flaps down along here. And just be careful that your fabric is all together and it's not wrinkled or anything. A lot of people like to use a decorative stitch. I kind of prefer just a plain stitch, and I do it about maybe 1/8 of an inch in from that. I need to take my 1/4 inch foot off because I don't want it to be catching my fabric. Take that off and I'll put a regular foot on. It helps if you have something to figure out. Like I said, you can make a 1/4, or you can do an 1/8 inch. A lot of the machines have a needle that'll move to the left or the right. This is going to be a tiny bit more. Let me see if I can get my needle to move. Okay, that moved it a little bit. Okay, that's good. So now I'm going to go ahead and just seam a straight stitch all the way across. And this time I'm using the inside of the left part of this foot as my guide so that the seam's going to be even when I get done. Didn't like that seam. So that side's done. And we'll finish with the other side. Okay, your table mat is completely sewn, and if you want to put tassels on the end, you can just pin them on, you can sew them on. Some people might want to sew them before they sew this part to sew them inside the seam, or you can put a little tiny button here and just attach your tassel with the button. I'm going to go ahead and press this and you are done. So as you can see, it's a real quick project and you've got your fall table runner. There you go. Thank you for being with me today.